Welcome everyone to the special business meeting of the District of Squamish for Tuesday, March 24th. At Squamish, please look last Squamish, we're meeting on the traditional territory of the Squamish Nation. We have an amended agenda in front of us. There was, we added a motion to close at the end. So with that, if I could have a motion to adopt the agenda, moved by Councillor Stoner, seconded by Councillor Anderson. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And do I have to read the blurb again?
Do you have it?
Just somewhere. Because we have folks participating by phone, I just need to read something, which I always forget. Bear with me here.
For those who heard that sound, that was Councillor Herford disinfecting his keyboard. All precautions.
Robin, I don't think I have it, so I'm just
Okay.
going to leave it up.
Okay.
So for councilors participating on the phone, if you need to leave the call or when you come back to the call, please let us know so that that can be recorded in the minutes of the meeting. If you wish to speak, please say chair and I will put you on the speakers list. I would ask that you stay on mute unless you are speaking. If you are having troubles with your connection, if you could please contact our Legislative Services GM, and she will let me know, and we'll take a 10-minute recess to fix that. If we're having problems on our side with communications, we'll take a 10-minute recess to reconnect everyone. When you're voting, you do not need to say anything with an affirmative vote. But if you are voting against a motion, you just need to say nay, so that we can record who is voting against any motion.
It's coming.
So with that, I will, I think I remembered everything. I will start the meeting. So we do have Councillor Race participating on the phone. We have Councillor Pettengill participating on the phone. And our acting CAO, Gary Buxton, is on the phone. So with that, we will begin. I did adopt the bylaw, didn't I? Or the agenda? Yes. Okay. So we have two bylaws to adopt today, both related to the intermunicipal business license for ride hailing. The first is for the agreement, and the second is to adopt our bylaw. So the first one is moved by Councillor Stoner, seconded by Councillor Herford. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next up is the business license bylaw number 2741/2020, moved by Councillor Herford, seconded by Councillor Anderson. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next up is our, on business, is our curbside collection contract award.
Here,
Yes. This is Councillor Race.
and I have previously declared a conflict in this matter with GFL. My campaign manager is now their senior person in this corridor, so I will declare a conflict and excuse myself. So I will be hanging up now, waiting to call back when this is finished.
And so we know how to contact you, Councillor Race?
If you do, it'll be Shar phoning me at my number.
Okay, thank you. So, with that sound, we know that Councillor Race has disconnected from the call. And so who is presenting this?
Shannon.
Shannon White, our sustainability coordinator, is also participating by phone today. So Shannon, I will turn this over to you.
Hi, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great, thank you. So hello everyone. My name is Shannon White, for those calling in. And I am the district's integrated solid waste specialist, and I'm here on the phone. I'm presenting today with my colleagues Chris Wickham, our Director of Engineering, Anthony, our procurement manager, and Meg Toon from the Wildlife Services Department. And we're here today to present the Curbside Collection Contract Award. Just with regards to process, as this is my first time calling in for a presentation, I'm just going to go through the presentation, and Robin is, I believe.
Yes, she is here, and
do the
she's your slide director today.
Great, thank you, Robin, for my slide directing. And then I'm going to open up just to my colleagues to see if I'm sure that I haven't missed anything in the presentation, and then I'll open up to council for questions. And we'll field those as best as we can, being not physically in the room. So I'll move on to slide 2, to events. So I just want to give a brief background on the curbside collection in Squamish. So the whole program rolled out in 2006. Initially, the District of Squamish started with garbage collection only, providing garbage collection to residents. And then in 2009, we added recycling, and then in 2015, organic collection started. The curbside collection program is a key part of our solid waste management system in our community, and it is also a key part to achieving the diversion goals of council, and as well as part of our zero waste strategy. Just for reference, in 2019, we had 6,546 households as part of the program, and we estimate that in 2020 we'll see around 6,771 households. And I have included average tonnage per household on the screen and in the report to council. So on average, each household produces around 410 kilos of garbage, 61 kilos of recycling, and 346 kilos of organics. And I just want to caution folks when they look at these tonnages, because these tonnages are being provided as weights. So, for example, recycling is a very light material, so 61 kilos might not sound like a lot. However, your recycling tote could be quite full and weigh significantly less than a half-full tote of organic. So just use caution when looking at these numbers. They do not indicate low participation rates in recycling. Advance. So to continue, I know that folks in the room are fairly aware of the curbside collection system, but I just wanted to provide a brief overview of what it looks like today. So garbage collection does alternate with recycling and organic collection. Garbage collection, all the material collected through the garbage goes to the Squamish landfill. Currently, the organic material is going to Sea to Sky Soil, which is an organic processing facility just south of Pemberton. Recyclables, the District of Squamish has signed up with Recycle BC. So Recycle BC, in essence, owns our recyclables collected through our program, and they direct where our recyclables are going to. So the current Recycle BC sorting facility, consolidation site in the community is GFL's Queensway Recycle Depot in their building there, and then it is further transported to other sorting facilities in the Lower Mainland. That whole system is controlled and organized and coordinated by Recycle BC. We have no say in where those materials go. Weekly organic collection is rolled out between the beginning of May to the beginning of November, and it was originally implemented really to reduce wildlife attractants in the spring and fall when we saw hungry wildlife accessing totes more. And then we also, it's rolled out really in the summer to increase uptake on the program. Initially when organic collection was rolled out, there was a lot of people not participating because of this X factor, so bugs, smell, etc. So we rolled out weekly organic. This contract, or through our curbside collection, we do not service multi-family apartment buildings and ICI, direct construction, industrial, commercial, and institutional buildings. There are some townhome and duplex complexes that do have curbside collection. So I just wanted to indicate what that last bullet point is. Next, for example. So the RFP process that we followed in this contract was we developed, the engineering department and procurement department developed an RFP, and we looked for best practices that are out there, what other communities have issued recent RFPs on this, what did we like and wanted to change in our current contract, and then we developed the RFP based on that. RFP is based for advertised products wide on BC Bid, the chief, and our website. We had a pre-bid meeting, which was non-mandatory, and three different companies attended. One from the corridor, one from the Lower Mainland, and one actually from the interior area. And we received one final proposal in the end. We went through the proposal, it met all of our requirements, it was in compliance. We have been going through a period of negotiations and questions with proponent back and forth. And I just want to highlight that throughout this whole process, we've been working closely with Meg from the Wildlife Department to just ensure that she's integrated into the process and that we're really addressing all the wildlife issues that we've seen with the current curbside collection program. So, this is that. Just an overview of our objectives in RFP and issuing RFP was really to achieve the services at a professional and cost-effective manner. So that included things around service time and the customer service. We also wanted to ensure we had a flexibility to meet material generation and different goals and how to build a flexible contract that can be adaptable to different situations. We also want to ensure that we reduce the amount of fares and wildlife accessing the totes. We want to provide an effective and timely tote repair and replacement system, reduce community greenhouse gas emissions through vehicles that are on our roads 5 days a week, as well as reduce contamination for all the streams, and offer a range of tote sizes for different streams, and then also raise awareness of waste generation and the corresponding costs of collection and disposal. So the scope of work that we've really it encompasses for the contract is collecting the garbage, recycling and organics, delivering the materials to the pre-approved destination, and then maintaining, replacing, repairing totes that have been accessed by wildlife.
Advance.
We also want to ensure that we have totes that are bear resistant and currently certified. And then the customer service, as I previously mentioned, provide community-wide waste diversion reduction education, as well as update the collection vehicles that we're seeing. Allow residents to have an extra tote of different streams if they require. And that GFL will operate the Queensland Recycle Depot under a contract between them, their company, and Recycle BC. I just wanted to identify that the District of Squamish recognizes that the depot actually is not in an ideal location at the moment. There are some safety concerns, and so GFL and the district are working together to find a better location. In the contract, I just want to highlight a few of the new elements that are different from our current collection system. And some of these elements that I'm going to go through are the implementation aren't going to happen immediately. They're not going to happen in the next couple of months. Some of them will take a little bit longer. As we develop internal processes, we might have to amend a bylaw, such as the fees and charges bylaw, etc. But this is what we have. So we are going to be, through this new contract, there will be new collection vehicles of a 2020 manufacturing date. We have identified a quicker tote repair replacement turnaround at 48 business hours. Residents can exchange organics and garbage totes for small and medium sizes at any time of the year. We're going to begin to phase out the large 95-gallon totes for garbage. And this point I want to highlight is really due to several reasons. A, we see a larger access of the larger totes by wildlife, but also in looking at the diversion goals of the District of Squamish and all of the work we're doing to reduce garbage and really encourage our residents to divert their recycling and organics. The question we pose is, why do we still have these extra large totes? So instead, we would like to offer those residents who need a large size, they can find a combination that works for them, so they can have a medium and a small, or just a medium. So we're going to be phasing out 95 gallons. As well, there is contract extension flexibility, really to incentivize electric vehicles. It is not feasible to have electric vehicles right away with this contract, so we are looking at how can we build a contract that encourages GFL when they start rolling out electric vehicles to kind of implement them first in Squamish, or second, third, near the beginning, so we can get them sooner rather than later. Additionally, the district will share the cost of tote repair replacement by wildlife, it's been accessed by wildlife over a certain percentage, like of a threshold. We're going to have a 4-hour window now to service garbage and organics during bear season. So that means the contractor will be committing to servicing garbages and organics during that season within 4 hours. So it's say the garbage starts at 7:30, they have to finish it servicing the whole community, or everybody on that route in that day within 4 hours. Additionally, we'll be sharing, the district committing to sharing the fines from the Cycle BC related to contamination, 50/50. And I should add that if we are fined, it's the district's Squamish staff's intention not to be fined for contamination, but this is now being built in the contract instead of the district of Squamish bearing 100% of that responsibility. As well as we're building in flexibility to change the brand or type of totes if better totes are found. So we are, as was presented by Meg a couple weeks ago to council, we are testing new tote types or brands in some of our hotspots in the community, just trying to find a better solution than the current totes in our system. And so we're building that flexibility into the contract. Advance, please. So, this again on the contract overview, we're looking at a 5-year contract with the option for extension up to 10 or 15 years. And that extension will really be dependent on the success of the tote program, so with low to little wildlife accessibility of the totes, the general overall performance of the contractor, meeting the requirements within the contract, and the electrification of the fleet. There are several optional elements as well that we are building in to the contract, and that includes glass collection, assisted set-up service, tote washing, opportunity to have an extra tote service. Sorry, this might be a little bit unclear in my presentation. Opportunity to have an extra tote service on an off week of that stream, if that makes sense. Visual inspection or contamination. We could shift to from single stream recycling to multi-stream recycling collection, or look at RFID system. The district of Squamish currently is not, we're not rolling any of these into the current contract just yet, so they're being built in as flexible options. All of them have a cost associated with them, and some of them come with terms of timeline. For example, if the district wanted to if the district wanted to do the visual inspection component, we'd have to commit for 3 years to that price. So, or we have to commit to do it for 3 years. So these all do come with a cost, and the district of Squamish is building in so that we have the choice to RFP out some of these services too if need be. If the district wants to implement any of these optional elements, it will be brought up during budget discussions or during city council. So the RFP price provided by GFL is $1,351,890 per year. You'll note that in 2020 we budgeted $1,386,351 towards this work. The budget was originally developed to include a slight increase due to call-outs and CPI, plus a 3% increase in contract costs because we knew it was going to be RFP'd out. These services in this price, I just want to be very clear, is for the collection service for all the streams on the regular schedule, the weekly organic collection from the beginning of May to the end of October, tote exchanges, as well as the transportation and storage of organic material. It does not include the tipping fee that we pay at the processing facility to discuss oil. That is a different amount that we pay. So I just wanted to be clear, this is what this covers. It is also a per household unit price, and so that's why I think around $1,351,890, because if there are more households that join the network, or there are so many tote exchanges, or if any fines are issued by Recycle BC, or some other items, then it could fluctuate. So this is the District of Squamish's best estimate at what the RP price per year is. Sorry, advanced. My apologies for the advanced moment. So the next slide, I just want to give an overview of GFI. So they are a large international company working largely in Canada and the US. They do provide collection, processing, transfer for both solid, non-hazardous waste and other wide range of recycling services. They provide residential collection to 30+ municipalities in Canada. They service industrial, commercial, construction, and institutional sectors, so they have lots of private customers. And they are able to leverage their GFL network of industry experts for best practices. And one thing that is not on this slide, but is now public, is that GFL is also the new Recycle BC processing facility in the Lower Mainland. So they're taking over a contract held by a previous organization. So they're also going to be processing all of the recyclables collected through the Recycle BC network in BC. So that being said, the resolutions in slide 11 are that the District of Squamish award the contract for curbside collection to Green for Life, and that the Mayor and Corporate Officer be authorized to execute the contract. Alternative resolutions are that staff include the pricing associated with the following optional elements in the 2021 budget discussion, and that council for the curbside collection contract back to staff and direct staff to negotiate a modification to the contract which is based on the feedback as outlined. So just before Council jumps in, just because we're on the phone, I just want to check in with my colleagues, Chris, Anthony, and Meg. Is there anything that you wanted to add in before we open up to questions? Or is this total protocol?
Chris Wickham's standing at the microphone, so I'm assuming that's his signal that he would like to say something.
No, actually, I'm good. I'm just moving into camera range for questions.
Okay. Is there
I'm
anyone
good
else on the team on the phone that wanted to add anything? Okay. So, Council, we'll move into questions. Councilor Stoner.
Thank you. I'm curious if we included or discussed at all the opportunity to have video on the collection trucks in order to support enforcement.
Through the chair. Sorry,
Yeah.
I can't see the nod. Yes, we have had it in, and that is part of the RFID option. Video is harder. We have the current video they do take. It doesn't catch the material until it's physically dumped. So we're looking at.
Can I stop you, Shannon, for a second? We just heard the phone beep, so did someone hang up or join the call?
Yes, I'm sorry, this is Dave Merrill calling in.
Thank you, Dave. Okay, go ahead, Shannon.
Okay, great. Yeah, no worries. So yeah, it is something we've looked at. It potentially could be part of the RFID pricing. The RFID system, it's evolving, so we'll see what that looks like if we decided to move down that route. But right now, we probably won't be going with video on the truck. The RFID system is largely meat-based. So yeah, it's something we've discussed, but right now it's not quite where we would like it to be. I'm sorry, the technology is not quite where we'd like it to be.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Herford?
Thank you. One of my questions was the RFID option and what exactly that would accomplish, but I get the gist of it from the answers there. A couple things. The contract extension in slide, I believe it's slide 8, if we could. So, so the 5-year contract with option for extension up to 15 years dependent upon success of the tow program. So those 3 items there, I'm assuming we have some solid KPI numbers that we're looking to hit with this. Like, the performance of the contractor seems very general. I mean, that would be meeting the contractual obligations. But I'm just sort of if you could pull those 3 points apart just a little bit so we can understand that in a little more depth.
Definitely, through the chair. So we, and unfortunately I can't give you many details on this because it's actually something we are currently working on, not only to give the District of Squamish reassurance on what this means, but also to give GFL reassurance as they're investing in new vehicles and things like that into this, this contract. So we actually are working right now with the legal team and then District of Squamish staff, so the team on call, to ensure what those look like. I should add, and I apologize I forgot to mention in my presentation, is electrification of the fleet. It will be in there, and it's a big kind of reason why we're offering this extension because, apologies for my terrible financial language, but the GFL will needs a longer time to amortize. Sorry, because of the capital costs for the new electric vehicles. But that being said, we also at that time at 5 years, we're building into the contract the fact that we can negotiate. So for example, if GFL turns around and says, sure, we can put in electric vehicles, but this is the cost, it's going to be significantly higher than the District of Squamish can or is willing to pay, we will have the ability to bring it back to council and bring that discussion back to council. So we're not 100% committing to electric vehicles, we're committing to encouraging GFL to get electric vehicles, and then depending on the availability of pricing, then we just say yes or no. Does that make sense? And sorry, I'm not giving all the KPIs just because we're still working with the team.
Okay, well,
and our legal to identify what that looks like.
okay.
I would just add to that, Shannon, through the chair, that on the success of the tow program, that is something that we'll be working very closely with the wildlife department on, and council saw a presentation just in the last couple of weeks on some of the challenges of the tow program and looking at what the long-term viability of that is. This helps GFL be a partner on that they realize that if we don't find a tow program that works for Squamish, then we may be moving away from totes in the long term. And so this gives us an out and also gives them a motivation to be helping us with that program, as well as looking at making Squamish one of the first of their communities to be electrified.
And thank you. I think you gave me a great segue. So my next question goes to, I think it's slide 9. I was trying to make a note if we could get there. So down at the bottom there it says if the number of tow repairs / replacements exceeds the agreed upon percentage. And I'm curious about that, and I'm wondering how that percentage relates to our current percentage of replacement, how aspirational that is for both the contractor and our community to hit, and what that looks like. And as you said, we had a presentation not that long ago about specifically about this, so I'm just curious how those things, if we're building in something that we're really trying to achieve and making sure that it's both, we want to aspire to, but that's the right mix there of both of those things. being realistic and giving us something to shoot for?
Yeah, through the chair, this has been a very significant challenge for the contractor, and the current contractor, and also for staff, that we have a very large number of the current totes being damaged. There was a lot of negotiation around this point, and we agreed on this. The language there is a little bit vague, I guess, trying to fit it into a single bullet point. However, really, we agreed that this is something that we all have to work on together. Some of the tote damage issues are about the design of the totes. Some are about user behavior, and GFL can't be on the hook for all of that. We all have to work together. So they agreed on a certain base percentage that they could expect to see for day-to-day damage and some wildlife damage. These are very resistant totes. And then also, and then beyond that percentage, the district will share the cost. So we all have some skin in the game to community-wide to find better solutions.
So then with that, and how does that relate to our current percentage if we're scoring the same way? That's sort of the part.
Yeah, I think, do you have the numbers, Shannon? Can you share those numbers?
Yeah, I think we can share them. So the percentage is currently at 10%. So, sorry, let me clarify. We see damage due to wildlife between 3 and 10% currently because of the, depending on the season. And then the agreed upon percentage at this point in time, 10%. And I would just, to add on to what Chris said, is that the incentive in this is that, A, the district doesn't want to pay extra money to be repairing totes, but also GFL also, it's currently a significant cost for them under the previous contract to be paying for tote repair and replacement, and so it's in everyone's financial interest as well to reduce that percentage in communities where they don't have wildlife issues. As significant as we, the percentage can be as low as 1% of totes repairs that need repair and replacement. So we are all, I would say, motivated to reduce this, and part of this is also if we are able to find totes that have less breakage, like that the bears aren't able to destroy as easily or break into, then it's in everybody's benefit that as well.
Okay. Thank you. I think that's it for me right now.
All right. Any questions, Councilor Pettigill, at this time?
Sure, yeah, I can, thank you. I just want to be clear, the optional items, I'm a little bit fuzzy about the status of those. Have they, are they sort of effectively interesting ideas that would entail a contract renegotiation? Or is this something that will come back to us and these are the hard and fixed prices and timelines for these optional things, and we're handling it separate than the main contract, but it's going to come in the next couple of months to us, these sort of add-ons? Or is this just a sort of negotiation down the road to sort these out?
Through the chair, that's a great question. Thank you for asking for clarification on that. Because this is a lengthy and important contract and a lot of things are changing, we wanted to have a bit of a pre-negotiated menu of potential options. And so these are all options that will have contract language and price associated with them. This is our opportunity to get the best prices and the best language during this RFP process. We're not locked into any of these, nor do we have the budget at the moment for these. So these would be something that would happen in future budget years. We also have the option of choosing, for example, the first bullet point is glass collection. We can choose to just simply add glass collection or not at the pre-negotiated rate, or we could also RFP out to people to find see if we can get a better price in the community. It just adds flexibility for council and staff in the future.
Sorry, if I can clarify though, from council's perspective, if we approve the resolution, we aren't necessarily, like, effectively, this is sort of a future negotiation from council's perspective, these items. Because we don't have any, we don't know what the price or terms are at this point, and that's all to be determined still. Is that correct?
I'll jump in?
Yes, go ahead.
Sure. Thanks. So just to clarify, and I hope I answered your question with this, but yeah, so the price that is presented here is purely for the services, the collection services that were outlined on slide 9. All of these optional elements, we haven't provided the cost or anything, so any of these that we staff wanted to roll out or council requested staff come to budget with, their sort of budget discussions, we would bring those separately. It will not require renegotiation of this contract. And if council passes the resolution to award it, you're not agreeing to roll out these optional elements. We're just getting, we just have pricing and an idea of what we would like, and they're easy to implement if we choose to go down one of these routes, but we're not committing to them.
Okay, and neither is the proponents, so there's sort of no effective commitment yet.
Exactly.
Okay, and then if I may have another question, just looking at a few items, so the RFID, the new vehicles, and electrification vehicles. Just curious why you put those as the requirements as opposed to, like, for RFID. I think what we're really after is automated tracking of what each household is disposing, so we can determine contamination, all those things. And for the EV and the new vehicles, I expect our goals there are something around operating costs and reducing emissions and or reducing dependence on fossil fuel supply chain. And so I'm wondering why we framed it in terms of some of the specific technologies and approaches as opposed to the kind of outcomes. And I'm just wondering about providing flexibility. If we find there's actually a better way to accomplish what we're trying to get at with RFID, that there's a cheaper, faster way, can we enable that sort of thing by not wording specific technology? So I'm just wondering if you can speak to that a bit.
I think I'll take a stab at that, and then see if other colleagues can add through the chair. That's a great question, and we tried to balance contract language between being overly prescriptive versus looking at targets, and I think in most of the contract language, we're trying to look at specific targets and outcomes. However, when it comes to a price list, this is an optional item. And so the price list, we felt we needed to be a little bit more specific on this is the price and this is what you get for the price, and the same for the contractor. In order to provide the price, they needed to know what they were pricing out. So that one was a little bit tricky. When it comes to vehicles, we are getting, just to be clear, we are getting new trucks with this contract. They're completely replacing their fleet of collection trucks. The electrification, we did specify electrification in the contract language. I think we would be open to another technology if it were to come about. but, I don't know, I think we're pretty focused on electrification being the best option at this point. So I guess we can cross that bridge if we need to in the future.
And can I start on?
Is that you, Shannon?
Yes.
Yes, did you want to say something?
Yes, I just could tell Chris was done. You're just taking a breath. So, and the other, just to add on to everything that Chris just said, is that originally we asked about RFID in the RFP. However, upon kind of further investigation, we came to the realization that RFID enabling technology is really about the data that it provides you is weight. So it would tell you, Shannon White disposed of X kilos over whatever time frame of garbage and whichever material, which is great in achieving or looking at reduction. However, we've really been trying to focus on contamination and diversion versus reduction. And so we've been exploring through this contract negotiation how we can address contamination versus targeting reduction. And to install RFID system, not only is it stamped on the totes, but it's also the tracking system and the person who manages it. And there's quite a bit of background to installing the system. So that's why it is in the kind of optional element, because if that is an area we want to go down, we could look at it further. But right now, the district staff have been prioritizing, as Chris mentioned, electrification and the new vehicles and reducing GHGs, and then also and then trying to kind of really hit home on contamination. But that being said, as you mentioned, technology changes, so that's why we've tried to kind of keep this contract open and flexible as much as possible, so that it can change and we can kind of look at new technologies that come out.
Great. And Chair, I have one final question.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. And thank you. I just want to dig into the new vehicle. Just want to get some clarification on why we felt that was important as opposed to, say, emissions targets or sort of operating costs that come to us or something like that. And part of the back of my mind is, we may be facing some economic uncertainty, and so just trying to understand if that is a restriction that's really important to mandate, or, is new really the most important thing, or is there something else that's actually more important in that what we're trying to get at, and I just don't have that understanding right now.
I think that's a great point through the chair. In this case, we did put language in the RFP around newness of the vehicle as a proxy for efficiency of the vehicle. It ends up being a moot point in this case with GFL. Their fleet is near end of life, and so they'll end up replacing with new vehicles, and they've committed to just bringing their brand new vehicles 2020 year into Squamish instead of doing a shuffle with their other fleets and giving us some half-used vehicles. So we see that as a benefit.
Okay, thank you. I'm just going to ask a question, and then I'm going back to Councillor Stoner unless I see other hands over here. Do you have any questions?
My question's really been answered, thank you.
Okay, Councillor French, you're good. So my only question really is around, two things. Why, as an additional service, we haven't put in piloting the central collection in neighborhoods, as we discussed with Meg Toom when she was here a few weeks ago, as an option in the future? That's my first question. Ms. White?
Oh, yep, sorry, I wasn't sure if this was So, we haven't put it in as, it's a great question through there. we haven't included that in. We did want to build flexibility in that. Two things. So in the flexibility, so the 5-year contract renewal point in place. So the intent is with what Meg brought to council is hopefully we can do an assessment and then potentially could look into rolling out pilots. And so at that point, we would then look at the contract in 5 years and say, okay, now we want to do it. Another piece is that we have built in, and apologies, it's not in the presentation, but we have built into the contract the ability to conduct pilots. Sorry, there's a lot to cover in the presentation, so this part missed it. But if we do want to implement a new service or collection container type or technology or something different, we can work with the contractor to do that. So that's built in there. And we are working with kind of the legal team about how to ensure that pricing and whatnot is in there. So we've kind of touching on it in 2 places without explicitly including it in the contract.
Okay. And the other piece, just the wording around electrification on the fleet. I wonder if there's wording in there that talks about a transition from a lower carbon fleet to a zero emissions fleet, because as technology evolves, it may be okay to go in a different direction than electrification, and really our goal is zero emissions versus a specific technology. So I don't know whether that is more helpful to us and to GFL over time, because they could use biodiesel right now and reduce the carbon footprint of their diesel fleet, and then look at how those larger vehicles are evolving. But the goal is zero emissions. So I just wonder if you had any thoughts on that.
I think that's a great point, and we can make that language change. We still have time to make that language change.
Then, and I think Councilor Pettengill was pursuing this too, we can see a decline sooner, and then evolve, and make the best choices as technology evolves rather than us sort of forcing it down one particular road. Okay, I'll go back to Councilor Stoner.
My question was going to be about neighborhood collections.
You're right. Councilor Herford?
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify around the Recycle BC fines and how it's been handled to this point. So that contamination fine has been, up to this point, has been solely the responsibility of the Squamish. So then the change that we're seeing here is that we're sharing the GFL is under this contract, be sharing the risk with us there in hopes of being more the contract being more proactive and helping with that contamination rate. Is that the
Correct.
Thank you. I just want to make sure I frame that.
I don't see any more questions. So council, we have the following resolution before us. Councilor Herford? Councilor Herford moves the staff
These
recommendation
two recommendations.
that we award the contract for curbside collection to Green for Life Environmental, and that the mayor and corporate office be authorized to execute the contract. Seconded by Councilor Stoner. Any further comments, anyone?
Actually,
Yep, Councilor Herford, and then Councilor
I want to just move this resolution. We had a couple suggestions here. The GHG reductions versus the specific task. Does staff feel that they've got enough direction with that, or is that something that we would like to include in our in this resolution?
I feel that we have the direction.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. I'll speak to it briefly.
Yes, go ahead.
So I appreciate all the work that's gone into this. This is one of the, I always think about the work we do here as local government, and this is one of the areas that most directly touches our citizens. So it's a very important service, and it's very important that we get it right as a community. So I'm happy to see this contract starting to share the risk with the contractor as well, and it's all of our responsibilities to ensure that our bear resistant totes aren't considered to be bear proof totes. We've got a lot of work to do there as a community, and I look forward to seeing those reductions and replacements, Also our contamination rate, this is something that we can all do. It's fairly simple and so we can, but hard to execute. So we're gonna and I think this provides some good motivation for the contractor, as well as some educational pieces for the community. So I'm happy to see this, and I think we're moving in the right direction. GHG reduction, and so on. So thank you for all the work, staff. I look forward to seeing those KPIs and also those options coming forward as we move through our budgeting process.
Councilor French?
With coming in partway through the conversation, I want to be clear on what I'm voting on. The optional elements, shifting to multi-stream glass, assisted set-out service, tote washing, extra tote and stream, visual inspection for contamination, and RFID system installed with the totes. Are any of those things included in this motion?
No, there would be extras that can be negotiated in future, and they would be part of budget discussions.
Okay. Perfect.
You
Thank you.
good? Councilor Anderson?
This appears to be a well-thought-through strategy, and it's been a thorough presentation, and I would be surprised if within the network of the GFL company that Squamish doesn't stand out as being involved in leading-edge work for a community of our size. Happy to support this.
Thank you, Councilor Anderson. Any other speakers?
Chair?
Yeah, go ahead, Councilor Pagio.
So I will be supporting this. I would appreciate some of the suggestions and would encourage it as much as possible. I prefer to our contract as much as possible to speak to the actual outcomes we're trying to achieve, and to the degree we feel we have to go with a proxy. I think it's worth somewhere in the contract being very explicit about what we're ultimately hoping to achieve with that proxy. And I just think, when we look down the road or what we're trying to do, we're trying to renegotiate, it's helpful to have that thing clear. And I want us to stay very focused on our actual objectives. I think this makes some progress there, and hope to see us work with GFL to ramp it up even further. But thank you for the presentation, and I will be supporting this.
Thank you, Councilor Stoner.
Thank you. This portfolio touches on so many components of our Community Climate Action Plan, Council Strategic Plan, and our official community plan. And I just want to thank staff for their innovative approach to this RFP, and I think it opened up some really neat conversation with the proponents that will get us closer to some of those big things, so electrification or zero emissions of the fleet. Hopefully reducing contamination. I'm happy to see some stronger language in there with the component, as well as hopefully aiming to reduce the overall amount that's going to landfill from that 410 down to that 300. That's still a big objective. I know it's ambitious, but thanks staff for the continued efforts to get us there.
Thanks, I'll be supporting the motion. Thank you for a great presentation and for really trying to alter the direction of our collection services to meet our community goals. I really appreciate that from everyone that's been working on this. And thank you for doing such a good job as our first fully electronically presented staff presentation of this era. You did a great job, Ms. White, so thank you very much for that. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll just take just a second here to get Councilor Race back on the phone. We'll pause here. On our agenda is the Squamish Sector Action Plan. And so this will be presented by Kate Mulligan, who is joining us by phone today. And Kate, is there anyone else joining you to present this plan?
No, I'm on my own. Gary Buxton, I believe, is on the phone line as well. And
Yes, he is.
supporting me.
Okay, so I will turn the floor over to you. Do we have your presentation? I know she sent out another version recently.
Yep.
You've got that one?
Where's my mouse?
We're just loading your presentation up, and if you just want to say advance or change the slide, then Robin will change the slides for you.
Okay, absolutely. Am I clear on the line?
Yes, just need to speak as loudly as you can because we're using the ceiling mics to pick up the audio. But
Okay,
your current volume is fine.
okay, absolutely. I'll do my best. I'm just on speakerphone, so please let me know if it's not working well. Should I be starting or should I wait for a few minutes?
Nope, you're good to go.
Okay, sorry, I just can't see the screen. Hi, everybody. Thank you, Mayor and Council. My name is Catherine Milligan. I'm the Economic Development Officer for the District of Squamish. I'd like to start off by first sort of switching the order of presentation as per the agenda. I would like to start with item 3, followed by item 2. What I was going to start off with was a bit of a situational analysis, considering the situation that we're facing right now amidst COVID-19. So if you'd like to advance the slide. So firstly, the federal and provincial governments have taken significant measures to support both employees and employers. And as well, measures are being announced almost daily, obviously, to address not only business and employment impacts, but just general impacts as it relates to our community and the situation as it's developing. What that means right now, if you'd like to advance the slide, permanently, we're in a bit of uncertainty out there. There's a sheer number and complexity of measures that are being introduced on a daily basis by the federal and provincial government as well as communities throughout Canada and the rest of the globe. And employees and employers are having a challenge in terms of navigating that sheer number of measures and resources and tools. And while the full gravity of the situation is not yet known, it's pretty clear that several local businesses in Squamish have been impacted significantly. So recently, a survey was conducted by the BC Chamber, and it was very well responded to in terms of, I think the sample was over 7,900 BC businesses, which is an incredible response rate. Of those, there's more than 155 Squamish businesses that have responded. In speaking with the Chamber, they have, in addition to the general release of survey data, if you'd like to move to the next slide, have also released information to the Squamish Chamber in terms of the response from the Squamish community. And so, in terms of the business impact, 90% of businesses are currently being impacted by COVID-19. And when we look at just the Squamish businesses alone that responded, that's actually at 94%. And then of those impacted, 83% of BC businesses are seeing a drop in revenue, business, or deal flow. In Squamish, that's 84, so that's the same. And 91% anticipate a further decrease in revenue in the near term. For Squamish, that's 95%. So we are seeing, that's like a greater impact among Squamish businesses as per the survey results. Next slide, please. There's a few more results. 73% of businesses expect that revenues will drop by 50% or more. With nearly a quarter saying revenues will drop by 100%. In Squamish, it's 86% and 31%. Half of the respondents say they will be temporarily shutting down their offices. Squamish, 52% of local businesses that responded said they'll be shutting down their offices. And 64% of respondents expect to reduce their staff by over a half. And a quarter say they're going to reduce their staff by 100%. Squamish, 76% and 41%. 41% respectively. And I think that the results speak to the composition of our local economy here in Squamish. We do over-index relative to the rest of BC in certain services that are immediately impacted impacted by the onset of COVID. So for instance, when looking at accommodation services, arts, entertainment, and recreation, the construction industry, and food services, are the number of firms relative to BC, the intensity of concentration of the firms are far greater in Squamish than the rest of British Columbia. Some of the less affected areas, businesses or industries, such as perhaps sustaining services or essential services, such as local government healthcare, we don't expect to see a drastic impact, but today in Squamish, we're definitely feeling the impact right now for our local business community. If you would like to go to the next slide, please. So last week, the Economic Development Department started to look at various actions to support local businesses today. That included a communications roundup of pertinent information for local businesses. Just to provide a quick update on that, currently we have a page live on our Squamish site. However, the Chamber's doing an excellent job in terms of creating a resource page for the local business community to access. And what we decided to do is to help support keeping their page updated and providing very high-level information on ours and pointing to this wonderful resource that's on this Chamber site. We're also sharing information with partners and also sharing our partners' information through our communication channels, whether that be newsletters, social, or other means. In terms of collect, analyze, and take action around business impact planning, we are working with our partners to understand the impact, and part of that is the results from the survey, and the BC Chamber will continue to survey their membership and local businesses with follow-up questions, and we anticipate using that information to help with our planning as we move forward. We are collaborating on a regular basis with our partners, spoke with the Chamber this morning, and we're looking for ways to streamline the work that we're doing so that we're not duplicating and that we're adding value for each other. Continuing to listen in on the federal government updates and understand what information can be shared with our local business community. And then also in terms of promote local businesses, just to provide an update there, the Chamber is brushing off the BC Buy Local campaign that they annually promote through their channels, and they are going to be looking at ways of just adjusting the messaging to ensure that, right now, that we are working hard to support our local business community wherever possible, and also by showcasing services that can be made available to our community in light of the situation. And we will help, as we always do, in promoting that campaign. Each year we do promote it through our communication channels, and we'll continue to do so. Move to the next slide. So I just wanted to be a little bit more specific in terms of impact planning. Right now, we are looking at sort of two phases of economic response. One is the immediate response that I spoke to in the previous slide. And we are also exploring what levers are available to local government to support businesses today, such as different measures that are within our power as local government. The other piece would be the future. So what does recovery look like for the district? And understanding what the balance is between business retention, so sustaining existing businesses here in Squamish, versus building in future resiliency, and so that we can expand businesses and drive investment. So what we're doing in terms of recovery response right now is we are awaiting the federal and provincial economic recovery plans. We are anticipating more details to come in the next month, as well as templates to help support communities around their economic recovery. We are completing a scan right now of different recovery plans that have been created by communities in British Columbia and throughout the rest of Canada. We are looking, as I said, into the development timing because we are sensitive right now to the current situation that's unfolding for our local business communities. And we recognize that right now many businesses are, dealing with their staff issues right now, contingency planning, adapting their services, and so on. So we are recognizing that. So we're working towards building internal frameworks right now so that when businesses can come up for a little bit of air and we can start working with them, we will commence. And then, as I mentioned, we are considering that balance between supporting existing business recovery versus building for future resiliency and economic diversity. Next slide, please. We are continuing with ongoing activities that were already planned in the 2020 year. That includes the employment-based model work to support the zoning work and help implement our sector plans. That will be presented to Council April 14th. The plan will be to present the inventory or how the inventory was put together, how the model methodology and limitations or assumptions with that model, and showcase some scenarios and discuss next steps. In terms of, we will continue with a focus on developing material research and also advocating for vital infrastructure, land use needs, and so on behind the scenes, and ensure that we have the right tools and resources for our local business community for now and into the future. And we are continuing the hiring process for 2 economic development specialist positions. There are 2 activities which we are postponing at this time. For one, the Squamish Sector Action Plan, which I'll be presenting following this portion of the presentation, until the situation stabilizes. It's rather limited in terms of what we can do. Several components of the plan involve the participation of our local business sectors and supporting organizations. And we just feel that we need to defer some of these activities until the situation stabilizes. We're also going to postpone the issuance of a request for proposals for an agri-food impact study and forestry and wood product study. District partners in the agri-food impact study and the forestry and wood products impact study are focused right now on business continuity and responding to their respective members. And the proper review and attention to the RFP process would be challenging at this time, let alone actually implementing the studies. We are in the process of reaching out to the province to see if we can get an extension of funding as it relates to the mutual dividend, which is in part funding the agri-food study. We will also look to implement both of those studies once the situation stabilizes into 2021. So that wraps up the item number 3 presentation. Should I stop there and allow for questions?
Any questions just on where we're at today due to the COVID-19 situation and the information that Kate's presented on that?
Chair?
Yes, go ahead, Councillor Pagnell.
Thank you, Kate. I guess part of my philosophy is that business is not in and of itself good or bad. It's good to the extent that it helps the security and happiness and healthiness of people. And so I'm just wondering how we are making sure, or what are we doing to keep people sort of at the priority of our economic health and making sure that, whatever we do for business is secondary to making sure that it is serving what individuals need. And so do we have any social services or other groups at the table besides just business.
Through you, Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you very much Chris, for that question. Excellent. We do have through the former ITSG, we did have some organizations. We actually haven't struck a group other than just some immediate partners in terms of initial discussions, which has involved Work BC and as well as the BIA, the Chamber, and Tourism Squamish. It's no doubt that people are at the forefront of this. Individuals is, obviously the most important piece. So our focus will be looking at not just the, continuity of local businesses here, but how their employees are supported through this. I'll have to defer in terms of, individual support services or social support services as they are sort of outside of the mandate of economic development itself. But we would work with our partners in terms of trying to drive inclusion and ensure opportunities are there for who needs the most.
Councillor Pettengill, this is the mayor. I'll just jump in here. The social service agencies organized very quickly, and Ms. Golbeck is our connection with them. And they are very much working to ensure that their services can continue through this crisis. And we are working in lockstep with them to provide whatever support we can. So that part of our community infrastructure is being tended to outside of economic development.
Thank you. Yeah, I guess just hoping to make the point a little bit that I don't necessarily see them as separate silos, especially in a circumstance like this. To me, at least philosophically, it's important to understand that economic development is in service to people, and we need to make sure that as we plan going forward, that connection is very clear and very top of mind. And so just being mindful of that when we think about what people are at which tables, it might be very important.
Agreed. We are trying to take an all-government approach to this response, similar to the provincial government. So our staff are staying very connected, and I'm sure that will continue. Did you have another question, Councillor Pettengill?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Councillor? Yes. I'll put you on the speakers list, Councillor Rees.
Thank you.
Councillor Anderson?
Yes, I note in your memo, Kate Mulligan, that you just quoted continued focus on land use needs by strategic sectors. This is my concern with respect to the work plan, that we do keep on top of our ongoing needs. The employment space model work was to be complemented by sector study land needs, because not everything can be modeled so easily, if you like. The sector study that you propose to postpone, I'm not in fact too concerned about that, but I am more concerned about the potential terms of reference, or that this may be discussed. And what I'm suggesting is that forestry and wood are two different sectors in our ecosystem with different types of land needs. This is something which we can discuss in future. I think that for forestry, if we consider it as a primary industry and distinct in that respect, we have a lot of available information, and it may be something that we don't need to, something that we could discuss as to what terms of reference could look like for our information needs. But my general point is that we do have an expressed desire from the forest industry to engage in a dialogue on a forestry land strategy, and we can check in with industry on that. But finally, we do, for example, in the Loggers Lane East neighborhood plan, council has discussed information needs before we can properly assess choices to make. And so maybe my question, I'll come back to the beginning then, is how can we address our ongoing need for industrial employment land information with the postponing of the elements of the work plan?
Hi, through you, the chair. Thanks, Councilor Anderson. In terms of land use needs, sorry, can everybody hear me?
Yes? we
Yes.
Okay.
The
Sorry,
minute
there's a
taker
delay on
problem.
the video, so I was a bit confused. So with respect to land use needs, we will be bringing that consideration forward to council on April 14th when Matt Dunn and I present the employment land and space model work. It is going to be built into that work. The impact studies for agri-food, forestry, and wood products are separate, and those would not encompass or not look at space needs or land use needs with respect to those industries. They would be simply measuring economic impact. So we will not be pausing that work. We will just be focused on that through the employment land and space model work in order to make recommendations around rezoning.
Thank you. We can revisit that or elements of that on the 14th if I have additional areas of interest. Thank you.
Councilor Race?
Thank you. Susan, I'm wondering, I'm looking at the business impact survey slide in your presentation, and I'm wondering if there are some businesses or business areas that are more or less affected than others. And you mentioned that government and health, I think, are less affected, and understandably, but I'm just wondering in the business community, are there some that are taking a bigger hit than others, and there's some that are escaping a little bit?
Through you, Chair.
Yep.
Yes, absolutely. We're seeing an immediate downturn in terms of our tourism industry, for instance. To an extent, food services, although some are retooling and shifting their services to try to address COVID. Some of the industries in Squamish most likely will be affected down the road as well. So some of them have existing contracts right now that are keeping their workforce busy. However, as time goes on, should there be a continued situation or we fall into a recessionary period, new contracts may be more challenging as we move forward. So absolutely, some obviously industries are affected immediately, some we anticipate down the road. The Conference Board of Canada has released their spring outlook. They have actually looked at it in terms of different industries, and we are at this point reviewing the data. We're also going to be considering that as we look at the employment space and model. So absolutely, definitely a shift. For instance, the retail sector, the downtown business core is much more significantly affected than obviously the big box retailers, which are still managing to stay open.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Herford?
Thank you. I was one of the respondents to that survey, so I can speak to it. And those numbers don't surprise me in any way. It's been a huge impact to our community, to our business community, which to Councillor Pettingill's point means to the employees of these businesses. And it's great to see the chamber and our economic development office working so closely together to sort of compile these resources. The landscape's been changing, well, kind of daily, depending on the workforce, whether they're self-quarantining or self-isolating or different regulations. So, and I see the list of resources is great, but my question is about the learning that some businesses have I feel have a way to go as far as hitting our distancing and all these other things that we should be doing, and others are just closed and we're gonna potentially wait it out, or maybe they're gonna have to potentially come back as we go. So I'm wondering about sharing of solutions and that we can do locally, because the other orders of government are all, and actually we're all stretched. So as far as like sharing some solutions to manage the space of staff and customers in an effective way, and so our business community can share the successes and challenges. And has there been some sort of roundtable, or I suppose virtual roundtable set up to help with this? Because I do feel that some businesses need to be doing more, and I think that some that decide not to deal with this right away, as the pure scope of this really starts to crystallize, we're going to be operating in a new normal for a period of time. And how can we help our businesses that decide to lay off 100% of their staff and close up and wait it out, which might not be sustainable given that it's probably longer than they anticipated, or like affect those numbers in some way with the resources that we have available to us here. So is some of that work happening? It's a piece that I thought was missing in the presentation so far.
Through you, the chair. Yes, some of this work is happening. In my call this morning, right now the chamber is exploring a potential town hall. And that town hall will be an opportunity for our local business community to ask questions to federal, provincial, and hopefully district or municipal representatives. Right now, the district is looking at economic development, is looking at how it can support initiatives like this, because you are absolutely right. There is so much information to navigate. We're also looking at ways that we can kind of reduce the amount of information and streamline it into a meaningful set of steps. We just have to be very cautious about our approach in terms of not misleading businesses or sending them in the wrong direction, and sending them to the best, most credible resource. The BCEDA just came out with a comprehensive resource for businesses that's all compiled in one spot and being added to. And in addition, they've also come out with resources for economic developers. So that's new and just released, so we're going to start looking at that as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions on that part of the presentation? All right. We're good. Ms. Mulligan, so if you want to proceed.
Okay, thank you. So the next section is actually item number 2, the Squamish Sector Action Plan. And the recommendation, which is the next slide, is that Council approves the following resolution: that the District of Squamish receives the Squamish Sector Action Plan dated January 2020. Next slide, please. The project background. In 2018, District Economic Development, working with partners and stakeholders, undertook a sector identification process. This was achieved through funding received through ICCI, which is federal funding, now called the CAN Export. It was a contribution by the federal government, and the purpose of the funding is to support communities seeking to improve their capacity to attract, retain, and expand foreign direct investment. And the funding was sector focused. In particular, it focused on technology, agriculture, and clean technologies, and was limited to various markets. And we have selected the U.S. and China as potential investment markets. The work looked at several different sectors of the economy and identified 2 thematic areas to move forward with in terms of creating a sector action plan. If you could move to the next slide. So the sector recommendations, I came out of that and presented to Council in March of 2019, and which were endorsed, were to create a sector plan that was focused on the green economy and outdoor recreation. That's not, like we are recognizing that we have other sectors that are vital to our well-being. So there were core and enabling sectors also identified in this work, which included tourism, transportation, forestry and wood products, education, high technology, and creative industries. From there, we did set out to again apply for Annex 4 funding and receive funding for the year 2019 to complete a sector action plan. You can go to the next slide, please. And today, that's where we are. We now have a draft Squamish sector action plan, and I'm presenting the action plan to receive feedback from council in terms of next steps. Next slide, please. I thought I would talk a little bit about the process in terms of developing the action plan. The information that resulted from 2018 work to look at the various sectors or potential sectors, as well as additional work done by economic development fed into the process. The consultant's ROI completed a regional analysis as well as a sectorial analysis for each of the thematic groups, the green economy and outdoor recreation, which also considers other areas of our economy, such as tourism, transportation, forestry, wood products, and so on. From there, sector profiling was completed. There was an asset analysis completed in terms of looking at what unique selling propositions Squamish has relative to other competitors. We also looked at market opportunities analysis and supply chain and growth region analysis. The sector profiling also fed into development of very, very high-level potential actions, which were then brought forward through consultation with stakeholders. There were approximately 20 one-on-one interviews that were completed during the 2018 period, followed by another 10 one-on-one consultations with industry in 2019 to help develop forward actions. And then this culminated in sector workshops, and those sector workshops had more than 70 attendees from a cross-section of sectors comprising of the green economy and outdoor recreation, as well as supporting organizations. And from there, the development of an action plan took place. Next slide, please. Feeding into that are other bodies of work that economic development and other departments have been working on, have completed or in progress. Deployment plans and space inventory and models are a large component of the work for the sector action plan, informing the sector action plan. The climate action plan not only runs parallel to the sector action plan, but is both dependent. And then the sector impact studies that we are hoping to continue with in 2021, they are integral to understanding the values that our various sectors represent through our local economy, as well as other supporting work such as the FLNG agricultural plan that Sarah McDermott has been working on with the FLNG. Next slide, please. So the sector profiling took place in the mid part of 2019. We worked to size each of these thematic areas, as well as took the definitions for these thematic areas and spent time understanding the regional context, the opportunities and barriers associated with each of these thematic areas, and other competencies such as workforce, innovation, education, and training. The green economy, in terms of opportunities for growth overall, concluded that technological cost efficiencies and rising energy costs and policy regulation will be drivers for growth, while funding environments, cost competitiveness, and development new talent will be barriers. So that the profiling provides a variety of data and contextualization for each of these thematic areas. Next slide, please. And for the outdoor recreation sector, we looked at recreation, sports technology, and performance apparel design, as well as adventure-based media and marketing, which included film. I'm just going to go into a little bit of the findings and recommended actions from the plan. Next slide, please. Next slide. General findings. So, in terms of competencies and assets, and unique strengths and positioning for Squamish, the general findings pointed to obviously our attractive lifestyle. That is a huge competency, our unique strength in terms of these two thematic areas. For one, for outdoor recreation, our brand, our lifestyle, create a sense of expertise, as well as a unique testing ground in terms of the development of outdoor apparel and sporting tech. The industry is here, as well as the influencers, and that plays to a large extent to the success that this industry has been finding in Squamish. With respect to the green economy, finding position, obviously our lifestyle as a unique strength for talent attraction, as well as the proximity to expertise in the lower mainland and the R&D and innovation space, as well as the investment space. So the proximity to angel investors, capital funding, financing is a significant and unique opportunity for Squamish, in addition to our unique position around land. In terms of future focus areas, the profiles provided different ideas for future focus areas. However, it's still to be in their nascent stages. In fact, there would not be many examples of those future focus areas today in Squamish, but they provide a compelling reason to look at our supply chains and how these clusters are developing and how they should. Slide 20, please. So the overall learning from the action plan was that when there was a review of the current dynamics and assets within the district of Squamish for these two themes, or supporting these two themes, many of the businesses and entrepreneurs are energetic and enthusiastic about growing these thematic areas, but there is very little formalization around them. And there's a lack of information at this time in terms of their ecosystem, and also there's a lack of connection between many of the players. So one of the overall learnings was building foundations within these key sectors or thematic areas is key to their success. And so whether that means formalizing associations or bringing these sectors into existing organizations versus just fact-finding and workshopping and understanding these sectors, it is a key component to the future growth. And then in terms of building on that, I would say the networking piece is really key. So the players within these sectors from the consultation process were very keen to continue building a relationship. And part of that will be defining a vision for each of these sectors or thematic areas. And figuring out how to mobilize cluster growth. The third finding of overall learning was there's lots of stuff on the go simultaneously and working in parallel with the sector action plan that the sector action plan is dependent on in terms of informing future actions. So a great example of this is the employment land and space model work. That work needs to inform, obviously, the business rezoning work, and that's integral to setting the foundation and for a business climate that's going to be supportive of strategic growth, sector growth. Next slide, please. So getting into more specific recommendations, the plan outlined, there were two priority areas. One was around foundational cluster development strategy and action. So that's really about, setting the foundation, convening the stakeholders, understanding them better through ecosystem mapping and building a directory, and then understanding their needs, whether it's workforce, innovation, or space needs. And a big part of that is really developing a vision as we move forward for each of these sectors. And it's not, it's not seen as a district's job or another organization's job. The sectors themselves or thematic areas themselves need to set those visions. Priority area 2 is much more around the outward strategy, so the foundation investment strategy and action. So that's really which investments are going to be targeting, and then how are we communicating the value proposition in a meaningful way? How are we measuring performance around what we implement and evolve our approach? So the two priority areas can be worked on simultaneously, but in order to set the foundation to be able to complete the investment strategy, we do have to have that initial foundation building done in terms of identifying the players, bringing them together, building on the information that we need from them, and maybe formalizing those networks a bit better. Next slide, please. Beyond the plan itself, economic development looked at other areas of this work and this work plan, as well as strategic approach to help affect or implement the action plan. One of the areas that has been in question for the past year has been our governance approach. Currently, up until now, we've basically had every 2 months a meeting with Squamish Economic Steering Group. The Squamish Economic Steering Group has been comprised of organizations involved in economic development, and they've included Squamish Nation, the Chamber, Tourism Squamish, co-working spaces, as well as community security side, community services, and so on. This group tended to be valuable in the sense that we were able to collaborate on initiatives together. So there's lots of value that we've received in terms of consultation support, actual projects that have been delivered as part of this group, and so on. However, there was an element of strategic advising that was felt to be missing through this governance approach. The Economic Development Department met with the Squamish Economic Steering Group to look at the structure, look at what has been accomplished, do a full review. We began this work in November, we concluded in February, with a recommendation by the Squamish Economic Steering Group to adopt this future governance approach. And the idea is similar to that of the climate leadership team. That would create a staff working group, which would be called the Economic Leadership Team, made up of strategic advisors within our community to advise on economic strategy, as would be meeting in general on a quarterly basis to begin with, maybe a bit more at the start. That would help provide strategic advice on the plan development and implementation of economic development action plans. And then we would also continue with what we're reframing the FDSG as a partners planning forum. So twice a year, among the planning cycle, we would be presenting our respective plans and looking for alignment and collaboration and eliminating duplication. So the FDSG approved this in February, and they also reviewed the Economic Action Plan 2020, which is the next slide, please. So we also looked at how we work and how our actions support the OCP and council strategic priorities. So this is just sort of a bit of a visioning mission statement. We work to support sustainable economic growth in Squamish by providing local business intelligence for decision making, conducting business development to grow high value sectors of our economy, and by supporting programs and services which encourage strategic sector development. So when we boil that down into tangibles, next slide please. In the official community plan, local employment skills and training, sustainable and diverse business growth, and land use and business infrastructure have implications with respect to policies within the official community plan. Council strategic goals obviously has a whole pillar that's dedicated to employment and economic growth. And from there, we've been able to distill what we think are economic actions that are going to support achieving strategic goals for 2020 to 2022. Next slide, please. So from 2020 to 2022, there are three primary activities that economic development has included within its work plan. One is business intelligence. So this is an area that economic development feels that it warrants the district to be collecting, collating, making sense of local level data for our business community and our decision makers. It makes a lot of sense. The federal government collects data, the provincial government collects data, so it makes a lot of sense that the district would be collecting data, analyzing data, and sharing it. So why are we doing this? It's so that we can inform policy development to support business and employment growth, and also to aid our business community and investors in terms of their decisions to encourage existing and new firm growth. How are we doing it? Well, we do research studies, we do primary research studies in primary data collection, we do analysis, and we also do conservation work. Who are we providing this service to? So government, partners, businesses, and investors. The second area is investment activities. There is no organization at this point at the district level tasked with investment activities or promoting investment throughout the district, with the exception of independent business themselves. So the objective or the why is to encourage new strategic sector growth and cluster development, to support our existing business growth as well. And how are we going to do that? Well, through the actions that I had demonstrated in the respective action plan, but through content development, marketing, and promotion. So basically, positioning and telling the story of our community and providing information that investors need to make decisions to invest in Squamish. To investors and other levels of government, because this is just not about increasing the number of firms here or growing existing firms with investment, but it's also looking at things like needed infrastructure to support businesses and create conditions that the business to sustain and thrive. So that could be investment in public infrastructure. The third area is programming and services. So that is really around not necessarily implementing programs and services, but instead supporting new programs and services that we learn are needed for our community through our research work that we do or the work that our partners do that are aimed at growing our local businesses and new businesses in strategic sectors. A lot of this is working with partners to deliver meaningful programs in our community. So how? Understanding the needs, doing it in partnership, connecting and facilitating, and communicating, but a lot of the times it's getting out of the way and letting the experts run the programs, whether that's an accelerator, a work-related training program, or otherwise. And to who? To our existing businesses, to startups, and to investors. Next slide, please. So following council's feedback today and subsequent endorsement of the plan, as well as the BYLAWS situation, the plan is for economic development to form the economic leadership team and then commence full plan implementation. Next slide. And thank you. So happy to take questions.
Thank you, Kate. I'm gonna get stuck on being able to 3D print food. That kind of blew my mind, but I'll open up the floor to questions.
Chair?
Yes, go ahead, Councilor Bates.
Thank you. And thanks for calling. You know, when I read this and heard the presentation, and of course I was one of the people who was at the meeting that passed the resolution to start this process off. And I'm wondering if that resolution is completely relevant today. I'm sure none of us thinking there, I know I didn't, sitting there considering that resolution, contemplated what we face in front of us right now. And the previous presentation, I think, highlights some of the fragility of sort of not diversifying an economy. The only thing I've got in my history that is even closely similar to this was in 1981 when I was living in Whistler, and I went to England for 3 weeks in the summertime, and when I left the economy was booming, and when I came back it was like somebody had turned out the lights. It happened that quickly, and we entered into a 2-year rather deep recession. So I think in Whistler's case, the only thing they had going for them at that time was it was either downhill skiing or nothing, and people stopped downhill skiing and so forth. And it taught us at that time that, you know, when things get tough, one of the first things that goes are luxury items and discretionary purchases. And that's the difficulty tourism has, because that's essentially what it is for the customers. It's not the basics. And in Whistler's case, you know, people in Vancouver concentrated on scrounging to pay their mortgages on their home in Vancouver, not their cottages in Whistler. And so property values plummeted, investment plummeted, etc. So I think there's lessons to learn from that. And I think also the previous presentation, it shows us that one of the strengths is diversification. And I looked at this report and I read most of it, I think, and I agree with it as far as it goes, considering those two sectors. But I think this may be a moment, and it may be fortunate or unfortunate, depending on your perspective, that we're looking at this in this particular business climate and realizing perhaps that maybe it's focused too much in some cases on discretionary spending and on tourism and activities like that. I recognize there are some things in the green economy heading that are sort of basic industrial activities, but I am concerned about perhaps at least discussing diversification and how this strategy would coexist with perhaps a co-strategy of diversifying and strengthening diverse areas of our economy. And also, I wouldn't want to, going forward, overly focus on this particular or these particular sectors and perhaps lose touch with the other sectors that we have in our community right now, or other sector opportunities that might come along that maybe just don't quite fit into these two headings. So I recognize it's a draft report. I'm sort of sitting here saying, well, we could receive it as far as it goes, or maybe we should add a little bit more thinking to it and broaden the scope of it a little bit to consider some of these other factors and where we want to go given the present climate and the difficulties we're having. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor.
Three.
Do you want to respond to that, Ms. Mulligan?
The only thing for you to share that I would like to say is that absolutely sector diversity needs to be a focus, this is this piece of work only specifically dealt with these two thematic areas. However, we have other bodies of work that are being completed that will help focus resources in other places. However, we do need to also at the same time, while we look at diversity, given our what we have to work with as a small community, we do need to hone in and focus in certain areas. Perhaps it's an ordering situation as well.
Thank you. Councilor Herford?
Thank you. I think we all recognize this is an interesting time to be discussing, well, most things. It seems that this is we're just in a different place than we were in the last month, and I hope that this work on understanding this delicate ecosystem of economic development in our community, hopefully we return to that normal. And similar to Councillor Race, I'm happy to receive the report, and I think it's a good body of work, and I thank you, Ms. Mulligan, for changing the order of our presentations. I think that acknowledges the crisis state that our business community is in, and gave us and gave us some perspective of exactly where we're at, and we still obviously as a district have through this time we're going to continue our ongoing work such as this and the zoning and all the other sort of regular business that we need to continue to conduct. So it's as far as specific recommendations from this, I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around those, but thank you for the work. There's so much depth there, and I hope that we sort of correct back to this, and this can still be considered accurate in the months to come.
Sure.
I'll put you on the list, Councilor Pettengill. No specific question?
There wasn't a question there. I thought there might be, but
Alright.
what's going to happen, I guess, is the question, but we'll just move on from there.
I don't think Ms. Mulligan has a crystal ball, so
No, I know.
we'll leave that one. Councilor Stoner, and then I'll come to you, Councilor Pettengill.
Thank you, and thank you for the work, Ms. Mulligan. Similar to my colleagues' comments, I think it's challenging sometimes to sit here as the global economy is a little bit at a crisis point. But I do think that this actually puts us in a really good position. There will be an after all of this happens, and this is one piece of multiple pieces of work that's going on within economic development. And as the global economy and our local economy rebounds, what was intended, this is intended to be a medium-term strategy, will be there, and we'll be able to pick it up. I think it's really important to have that groundwork done so that we're able to act when the time is right. So I want to thank Ms. Mulligan for having that ready to go. My question is, as I was reading through this, and also I attended some of the workshops, Ms. Mulligan, there's obviously a spectrum of businesses, and many in our community are on the smaller scale side of that spectrum, from small to large scale. And they aren't necessarily interested or don't necessarily have the capacity to start thinking about foreign direct investment, which is what these particular action strategies are focused on. And so I'm curious if there's a magic number or a certain scale of businesses that you need in your environment in order to drive kind of that cluster vision planning and advocacy, or if that's really just kind of sector dependent or environment dependent.
Through you, the chair, that's a really great comment and question at the same time. The body of work was completed using the funding for FDI. However, the focus of the work was less so on foreign direct investment positioning and much more around the foundational work that has to take place within our community to form clusters. So, I've acknowledged our industry is typically made up of smaller businesses, often micro businesses, and you're right. the scaling up that would be required to attract FDI investment would probably not be reasonable for them. Many of them are grappling with just maybe how to export if they're doing that at all. So the work is really meant to help develop those partners and put strength or backbone behind these businesses so that we can position ourselves to drive future investment. It's much more of an exercise at the foundational level at this time as opposed to driving the FDI investment. So I think you'll see that, or if you have posed as the action plan, the FDI portion of the activities are not as established or within the plan as the foundational activities, and that's because there's so many unknowns at this point.
Yeah, that's helpful. I think that's an important contextual piece for our community and our business community in particular to hear, because I think that concept of foreign direct investment often scares a lot of folks off. So it's, I appreciate that follow-up. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Pettengill?
Thank you, and thanks for the great presentation, Kate. A couple thoughts and then a bit of a question. In terms of, I think green economy and that focus is, for me, a little bit different than some of the other things that we talk about, because from my perspective, it's not just about economic windfall. It is about sustainability. It's about the climate crisis and surviving that, which unfortunately isn't going away just because we're also dealing with COVID. So there are reasons over and above the economy, while, in general, while the green piece is important, and especially around sustainability and on how we implement that may shift a little bit in the context of COVID. But I think many of the concepts are going to be incredibly relevant. So I'm glad to see that piece is there, and I think we're very lucky to have that there. But I wanted to dig into a little bit, just understanding, and I may be repeating a bit of Councillor Sommer's question, but understanding foreign direct investment and the focus of our efforts. You know, on the one hand, we have like a NEXI or a carbon engineering, and you know, we tend to use similar terms like either startups and we want foreign investment. We're going to put efforts into incentivizing this and providing the you know, the data and all that sort of thing to make companies like this happen. But then we also have like a green thumb technologies, so sort of locally started companies, very relatively speaking small, also looking for investment, but it's a whole different type of investor. And you know, I would suggest, you know, carbon engineering and that type of company. That's what I think of when I think of foreign direct investment. I think of big institutional investors, major government investments, where I think, from my perspective, where Squamish is the bulk of our opportunity and efforts sort of from the company side seem to be more on the sort of investor, although they may be foreign, they're not necessarily involved with government or wanting to be involved with government. And the needs of that sort of company, I think, is very different than the carbon engineering, yet they all might be sort of part of this green space. And I'm just picking on the green sector for an example. So just trying to understand where we see the focus and the bulk of our efforts. And I just want to touch on two, you know, we've spoken a bit about clustering. What I'm seeing, you know, I can expect for carbon engineering, what they might look for clustering is a cluster of supportive businesses and industries that are all kind of in the same sector, geographically co-located, and they can all help each other. But on the much smaller side of startups and Squamish, in terms of clustering, what I'm seeing is the clustering is around the stage of business as opposed to the sector. And, you know, that's useful because my investors for my startup, you know, might be a completely different sector than your business, but my investor might be interested in investing in both, or at least my investor would know someone that wants to invest in your business, and we both have staffing challenges. And so I'm seeing a lot of companies working together from completely different sectors, wanting to be physically co-located and finding that value and that sort of clustering around the company's stage as opposed to sector. And so I'm just, you know, are we focused more on the big, I kind of consider them unicorns, like a carbon engineering, or on the sort of smaller ones. And, you know, we're putting efforts into carbon engineering because it's a great opportunity, and so we're putting some effort there, but it's not actually our key focus.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Again, great commentary and great question. In terms of the focus of effort, you're right. FDI investment, you know, is a bit of a unicorn in itself. We do see investment coming in, foreign investment coming in. Some of that is around succession of local businesses. Some of it's around just investing in our local business community at the micro business level. So in terms of our efforts and what we're going to be doing as we mobilize, that's exactly the work that's going to take place in the adaptation plan. So it's determining, it's bringing together those stakeholders and figuring out exactly what the needs are as it pertains to, you know, maybe their stage of business or their sector. So, for instance, an example, I guess a hard example would be, you know, as part of the implementation strategy around foundational cluster development, we'll be convening another series of, I guess we call them workshops. We will be looking at visioning work, as well as understanding sort of what that ecosystem of existing businesses look like and those organizations. And we will be determining whether or not, depending on the stage of particular sectors and the composition of those sectors, what are those future actions that we have to take. So the answer is, it's not like I have an answer today in terms of, you know, how we're going to address the needs of particular businesses, the size of businesses, and the stage of businesses, but that is the direction we're heading in.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Anderson?
Kate Mulligan, I've spent quite a number of hours with this report, and I think it gives me a good perspective on the care and the work that's gone behind it. I am sympathetic to Councillor Race's suggestion that maybe before we endorse, there's some opportunity for reflection given our current circumstances. But I also must reflect myself on the fact that whenever you have visited with us during meetings in last fall or earlier in the spring, we've been unlucky to have not enough time, in my view, or in my experience. So I have grouped some thoughts in certain themes, and I'll list them briefly. And then we can see what we'd like to do about that, or what Mayor Elliott may suggest. So firstly, I believe that there should be some enhanced highlighting of the land and premises issues at various places through the report. The land and premises issues. Some places I think it is overlooked or not emphasized enough. Secondly, I believe that also applies to the mission statement. The mission statement refers to programs and services of the District of Squamish, but actually neglects to employment lands or space. And just something to think about, to consider. I think it is a key issue. Thirdly, as I've already mentioned in connection with your other memo that we discussed, I do believe that it would serve our cause better to recognize the primary industry, forestry, that is logging, sawmilling, and related, as distinct from value-added wood. They are very different worlds with different issues, and there is no benefits to lumping them together in this report. I think that lumping together only serves to provide obscurity in some ways. So that's a point to be considered. Finally, I think in various places that there could be some greater clarity as to what type of business is being addressed or discussed or targeted, or subsector, and by that I mean service, or tech firm, or manufacturing. And in fact, in places I find manufacturing is missing in attention, where I believe we should rethink that, or just make sure that we're covered for future uses and readers of the report. One area, I could go into examples for these, I'll look to Mayor Elliott because I know we have other things on our agenda this afternoon, because I could readily offer a few example points in written form for you. I'll just come back to an example on manufacturing. In the outdoor recreation sector profiling, there isn't any mention of, I'll call it rec tech manufacturing. And I think that needs some thought. I can think of 3 companies. In fact, our oldest manufacturing company in Squamish is a rec tech ski lift and other recreational goods manufacturer, still thriving after 55 years. Aerial Ropes is a manufacturer, or would have liked to have been, and maybe they will be going back into that again. And the kite surfing community are claiming that there could be some sail manufacturing here. These are just examples. So Kate, in summary, I think that we've got a sound framework in your report, but I do think that there are some emphases that might be revisited, and even in more of a general sense, going back to Councillor Race's point that maybe it's time for a little bit of reflection considering where we are, and that we've all been buried, your team, in this report before all this blew up. I'll just turn it over to Mayor Elliott, if she have any advice or thought here. I'm not sure about our schedule this afternoon.
Well, that's fine. Ms. Mulligan, there's 4 specific things there. I'm not sure if you were writing them down, but I'm happy for you to address them.
I have written them all down.
Okay, so I think the first one was land and premises and strengthening that context.
I'm sorry? Can you repeat that?
The first thing that Councillor Anderson mentioned was strengthening the language around land and premises.
Yes, I do have that.
Okay, so why don't you address his questions?
So in terms of strengthening the work or the output of that, we're really counting on the work that's being done, that's working in parallel with this report. This report was completed at the end of 2019. So I do recognize that there are, I wouldn't want to call them holes, but there are areas to strengthen in terms of the report itself. And simply because at that point, we just didn't have the information with respect to land use and premise issues, which will be forthcoming. In terms of the mission statement, where you mentioned we work to support sustainable economic growth by providing local business intelligence for decision making, that's really pointing to the idea that we provide information that helps inform policy. Economic development isn't actually writing the policy. It's usually another department of the district that's recommending a particular policy, but we're informing that policy through the work that we do. And that's why it was worded in that way. In terms of separating forestry and wood products, the reason that they're put together for the purpose of the impact study that we're doing, it just made a lot of sense to place those together in terms of the actual impact study. In terms of breaking them out in the sector strategy, we could look at doing that. I do know they are very distinct, but we looked at other strategies and seen them grouped together, and we think that there are areas that the green economy or green economy actions and economic opportunities can present for the forest sector, as well as the value-added wood products.
The last one was about manufacturing and other types of businesses.
I'll have to go back and take a closer look at the report to see if manufacturing hasn't been emphasized. However, I will say that to date, our focus has been looking at, okay, given our overall land constraints in Squamish and the evolution of the types of businesses that we're seeing developing here, much more tends to be focused on R&D, design, innovation, testing, than we are seeing in terms of actual manufacturing. And in particular, in many cases, the cotton manufacturing locally within Canada, is outperformed by other areas. For instance, bikes, are typically being, I think, manufactured in Taiwan. However, a lot of the design is taking place here. So that's why the focus has been primarily side. However, we can go look at the existing composition of businesses here and ensure that we are capturing those manufacturers.
Councillor Anderson, do you have any follow-up?
Yes, thank you. You've alleviated my concern regarding the distinguishing between forestry and value-added with the sector strategy. I do think that makes sense. In fact, it'll be helpful. With respect to the impact study, in fact, the province separates them, and it does so for reasons of how you gather statistics, and there's certain things that were visited in your tourism impact study which might illustrate that. So I'm alleviated on that point, if we could consider that ongoing, the practicality of keeping them distinct or keep that conversation going. With respect to manufacturing, I do have a concern that we make assumptions, and I think the council should generally pause on that one because a lot of the data that is found in this report is quite general in nature. It's national, it's city, it's urban, and I think here in our circumstances there are some things to consider. Not least the advice that comes from the value-added sector consulting field, and that is that I'm looking at a chart here that if you focus on a company that is producing a system or an element, a component that integrates many things and many services, that is what you build a cluster around. A design firm is here, or if you look at the local value-added prefab companies, they have used design firms between Germany, France, Taiwan, and Vancouver Island, and they keep changing who they use. So there's certain things I think that are important to consider for council in where manufacturing sits within an economic development strategy generally. Finally, and I hope this may help, on the question of clarity of intent, and I'm referring to pages 14 and 15 where you discuss the green building and construction technology sector, and there's reference to construction firms, manufacturers, service suppliers, building contractors, small and medium-sized builders. But over those two pages, there's two that are left out. Big firms and manufacturers. And I believe that we should leave open and consider an open door to both bigger firms and manufacturers. But I noted that both of those are missing in that whole discussion. And that was a little bit of a concern for me, but perhaps as you write a long report with your team, there's all kinds of things that slip through the crack. But here again, I think that any offer to think further, further deliberate, offer points of information would be welcome as far as I'm concerned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Through you, the chair, I have noted that, and we will review that section. And I do agree with your comments with respect to manufacturing overall. But from the work that we had done, in particular the stakeholder sessions, the workshops that we had conducted, there was a lot of discussion around clustering, and there was a lot of aha moments that took place with the various stakeholders that participated. We did have a stakeholder that works in the home manufacturing business, or home building business, who is saying right now, and I know that you've talked a lot about this, Council Anderson, in the past, that they are going out to various manufacturers to obtain products that could otherwise be made locally, or at least within the borders of British Columbia. And that if we could identify those as our strategy in terms of seeking new investment in new firms, that would greatly help reduce costs for that industry, and those costs could lead to greater revenue and profitability. So duly noted, and I think that the report itself will go back through it and see where that can be bolstered and pulled out to highlight.
Sure.
Yeah, you're on the list, Councillor Pangale?
I may briefly just add, Kate Mulligan, that there's been some new work done on Vancouver Island by economic development agencies you'd be very familiar with, focusing specifically on manufacturing, and we could sure borrow a few of their ideas and some of the information that they're bringing forward. as far as strategy. I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you.
Councilor Paglia.
Thank you, and I just wanted to touch on a couple things that Councillor Anderson brought up, and so, I was actually comfortable with the level of attention to manufacturing, and because in my mind, as a future forward-looking plan, I think what we're seeing is greater and greater automation, more capacity for automation, cost for automation coming down. So I really see, especially where land is constrained and expensive, I don't know that's necessarily a place where you want to put up a giant factory full of robots. And so for my mind, any manufacturing that would be here, especially as we move more to the future, is going to be more on the R&D or very small scale side. And, maybe there's something that I'm not understanding, but, again, I see sort of large manufacturing opportunity as something that's probably not something that I would, I would have questions if that was in the strategy. And so I kind of think what's there made sense to me. So, there may be some very specific, unique cases, but in general, I'm not sure that's where the future is for Squamish.
Thank you, Councilor Paglia. Any other questions or comments, Council? I think, Ms. Mulligan, one of the things that I appreciated in the direction of the report is the piece around building that foundation and allowing our local ecosystems to define the vision as well. And I think that is a really important piece of work.
Thank you.
So it'll be interesting to see how much we can evolve our plans over the coming months. But I appreciate the work that's gone into this report. Are there any other questions? Councilor Anderson?
Yes, Kate, I'd like to refer to page 19 in the text. I'll read out a sentence that wasn't clear to me at all, and really what I'm asking is, can we follow up with you to get some clarity as to the intent of this? And I'll read it out. It's under Squamish Market Opportunities under Green Building. The below market opportunities are seen as the best starting point for Squamish to pursue on a more continuous basis with respect to technology industries and key regional needs. What below market opportunities means isn't clear at all in that paragraph, and as it is a kind of a preamble, it would seem to be an important thought that the authors had there, but it isn't clear to me at all what below market opportunities means. But that's just an example of something that I hope we may be able to follow up with you just for additional clarity.
Absolutely, I've noticed that. You're talking about the green economy profile, right?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, noted.
Sure.
Yes. Isn't that sentence referring to all the opportunities listed below, Councilor?
Below on
Yeah.
the page or in the text?
Yeah, the below market opportunities, the ones listed. But
Okay, it's not at the bottom of the market, it's at the bottom of the page.
That's right.
Thank you.
I think it can be better worded, I agree. But I think that's what they're referring to, not below market, but the ones below.
Appreciate it.
I did just open the report, and that is correct. It is the market opportunities presented below. Maybe the wording needs to be.
Yes. Yeah, so the wording needs to be updated there, because it sounds like we're shooting for the bottom of the barrel. Thank you for that. Councilor Bates?
Thank you. And I've listened to my opening comment to the comments of my colleagues, and I'm not really taking issue with them, or the report, as I said, as far as it goes, but I do think that what is missing is some kind of a contextual statement. And maybe it's a preface to this report, where this fits with, when you say sector, for example, to me that means a part of a whole. And so this is not the whole, this is a part of the whole, and I think there should be just some conversation about how this fits in with the whole, and because this will impact land use issues and so forth, and possibly future opportunities. And this report, like most of the reports we get, is going to be used hopefully by future councils, future staff, and so I don't think we want to lose that aspect of it. That this is a part of it. This is not the whole deal. Diversification is still, for me at least, is still one of the principles that we should be operating on. And so I just maybe just put it to this all again. Is that a possibility when between the draft and the final copy that we could have some sort of a contextual discussion or preface to the report?
Through you, Chair, definitely we can enhance the introduction that's included in the executive summary. Because right now the executive summary basically positions saying that we've undertaken development of the action plan and in charge, of course, for deployment of action steps to raise the jurisdiction's global profile and support the attraction and retention of strategic investments in the region, with the two targets being the green economy and recreation. What I think is missing is that one component of the total plan, and here's the sort of all the other pieces. So absolutely, I think that's an area we can bolster. And this is a bit of what's challenging kind of coming to council with this, given that this is just really one piece of the I don't want to say puzzle, but of the plan or the work that we're doing. And I don't want it to be construed as the only focus that we have, but yes, a very important part of it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Riggs. Any other questions, comments? Okay, so a motion to receive the Squamish Sector Action Plan, moved by Councilor Herford, seconded by Councilor Stoner. Any comments? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Mulligan, for both of your presentations today.
Thank you.
Okay, so next up, we should have Mr. Merrill on the phone about the National Trade Corridor Funding Grant submission.
Yes, good afternoon, Mayor and Council.
Good afternoon, welcome to the meeting.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
All right. So I don't have a presentation for you to look at while I'm talking, so this might be a little awkward, but I'll go ahead. I just wanted to provide a brief overview of the memo you have in front of you regarding the National Trade Corridors Fund, or NTCF, Grant Submission Debrief. So Transport Canada issued a continuous call for the NTCF, which the intent was to target projects that improve the performance of transportation systems to increase the value of goods exported from Canada, increase existing and or generate new overseas trade flows, and that they also considered the extent to which a project would add capacity or address bottlenecks near major transportation hubs and corridors in Canada that will contribute to generating or increasing overseas trade. So really, it's all about improving the performance of Canada's export and trade network, transportation network. So back in 2017, Squamish Terminals made an initial application to the continuous call for only the dredging component of the project, which is essentially dredging of the approach channel to the terminals. And that project was rejected, or that proposal, was rejected as Transport Canada staff deemed the project too small to be considered for the grant. At the time, Transport Canada staff provided feedback and noted that the dredging project was, in fact, eligible under the grant, but it was just too small. So moving forward to 2019, Squamish Terminals approached the district to make a joint application to essentially increase the scope of the project. So the proposal, in addition to the dredging, included both the two-lane replacement of the existing 3rd Avenue bridge on 3rd Avenue heading out to the terminals, as well as the new Pemberton Bridge, which will connect Pemberton Avenue downtown to the new Royal Road and the highway beyond. So an expression of interest submission was successful, and we were invited to submit a comprehensive proposal. And to facilitate the development of that proposal, Squamish Terminals retained and funded a consultant to prepare the bulk of the proposal document with assistance from Squamish Terminals and district staff. And in July 2019, a complete, in my mind, complete and thorough proposal was submitted to Transport Canada. And then fast forward to January of this year, we received notification from Transport Canada that the proposal was not successful. So in February, a debrief call was held with Transport Canada, Squamish Terminals, and district staff, which is summarized in the memorandum, and I won't go through all the points of feedback in detail. What I will say is that while Transport Canada staff noted that the proposal was very well done, a key piece of their feedback was their opinion that the dredge project was not, in fact, eligible for funding, which contradicts previous feedback, as I mentioned. And essentially, I believe, would have precluded us from passing through the expression of interest process earlier in 2019. So with that, the continuous call does remain open. However, at this time, I believe there are no plans to submit a new proposal based on the feedback received. And that is the end of my summary. I'm happy to take questions. In addition, Mr. Buxton, who's calling in on the phone, would be able to answer questions as well.
Thank you. Council, any questions about that? Yes, Councillor Anderson?
Dave Murrow, I happen to have been working in this marine transport industry when the Pacific Gateway Strategy Action Plan was being formulated. And of course, I had my eye on what was going on in Squamish. And it seems to me that a sense of the past and the future is important for us. I'm considering the comment that your report relates from Squamish Terminals. That is that SQT staff suggested that the National Trade Corridor program does not support coastal BC trade communities that fall outside but therefore interface with major ports. This is a long-standing thing that Squamish, in short, falls off the map. And Squamish Terminals specifically falls off the map. It's something that I've had conversations with Squamish Terminals staff on for well over a decade. And I have also I have a reference to a letter that the district received from former Transportation Minister Judith Reid relating to this subject. And what I'm saying is we need to keep this an open, ongoing file so that we're prepared for next time. And that we also need to, I think, incorporate that comment by Squamish Terminals into our policy. And by that I mean Marine Action Strategy will address our gateway, and it will address these large infrastructure needs, or should. And I suggest that we need to be prepared for ongoing advocacy and make sure that our story is straight, because we may need next time to bring in Site B for 3 reasons. Road access, dredging, future development, and 1/3 of the freight leaving Site B today goes directly to international markets. And fourthly, Squamish Terminals' parent company is the main company involved in that game of sending logs to international markets. So in summary, I'm babbling on here, we need to be prepared in policy and planning ongoing for advocacy, and watch ongoing how Squamish falls off the map and why.
Thank you very much, Councillor.
I have some package of things, including the 2003 letter from Minister Judith Reid, who balked at the idea of the province helping to support the Mampwood Channel Bridge, and she elaborated on that. Anyway, I have a few things from the files that I'd be happy to share with staff on this topic.
Thank you very much, Councillor Anderson. I'll look forward to receiving that documentation.
Councillor Stoner?
Just want to thank staff and Squamish Terminals for the work they put into this application and the previous one. No doubt it's frustrating given the amount of back and forth that we had previous to the rejection of this application. My question is whether it would be worth sending a joint correspondence from the mayor and Squamish terminals to our MP, the Minister of Transportation, and whoever else our contact is at the ministry. With regards to some mixed communications that we're getting on this, I feel like some further action is necessary given the mixed messaging that we received. So I'd be curious to hear staff's feedback on that.
Chair, Gary. Oh, sorry, yeah. Gary, please go ahead.
Yeah. Mayor Council, we can certainly contact Squamish terminals to determine their interest in doing that. I suspect they might. So we can certainly, if that's the direction, we can certainly follow up with the terminals on that.
Okay. Did I hear another voice on the phone? With a question? No. Councillor Anderson?
I do have another question, if you like, and that is, when the Squamish Chamber went to the BC Chamber Convention 2 years ago with Squamish Terminal's support regarding dredging funding, we found very strong pushback from Surrey and Fraser Surrey Docks. They were not interested to share, if you like, the federal funding envelope with Squamish or Nanaimo. And so my question, or maybe just for consideration, and Squamish Terminals will be the experts on this issue, is to what extent are we being treated, or is this an issue that we should also monitor? Is competition with other facilities and their better position in advocacy because they're part of a federal port authority, Fraser Surrey Docks. Fraser Surrey Docks is a major competitor, of course, to Squamish Terminals.
Chair, Gary here.
Yes.
I believe, and I hope Mr. Morrow can correct this, I don't think competition was our biggest issue here, because I don't think the fund is completely exhausted. I believe there are funds left, so I don't know that competition is our issue here.
Thank you.
Right, any other questions? Oh yeah, Councillor French.
Thank you. I'd like to know to what level of involvement was the Squamish Nation participating in all of this? Were they involved at all?
Dave Merrill here, through the chair. Squamish Nation was consulted. They provided a letter saying that they had no opposition and that there no further consultation was required.
Okay, so with that, is there an opportunity to potentially have the Squamish Nation more involved in future lobbying efforts around dredging the Malcolm Line Channel and any other areas at the top of Howe Sound that require dredging?
Again, Dave Merrill here, through the chair. That is absolutely something that we can look into, both if we decide to pursue this grant funding any further, or other projects as you noted there.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. If I don't see any more hands or hear anything from the phone, I will. Yeah, Councillor Stoner?
So I would like staff to explore further with Squamish terminals if they would be interested in writing a letter. Do they need a motion for that?
Yes.
So I will move that staff reach out to Squamish terminals to explore writing a letter to our MP, the Minister of Transportation, and other contacts within the ministry with respect to mixed messaging on this grant funding application.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Anderson seconds. Thank you. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. thank you, Mr. Morrow, for your presentation and your work, as well, Mr. Buxton, on this grant application.
Thank you very much.
Our fifth item on the agenda is the cancellation of regular business meetings. So do you want to speak to this, Ms. Arthurs, or no? So we are in challenging times. We have not received any direction from the province yet about how we can include public participation in our meetings and meet the threshold required. We're still awaiting that, as are all local governments at this point. In the meantime, we are adjusting our procedural bylaw to allow full electronic participation. We are following social distancing guidelines, which is why all of our staff are presenting on the phone today. So until we have a better idea of what the future holds, we are proposing to cancel our regular business meetings in the month of April. They were scheduled for April 7th and April 21st, and that we will hold special business meetings to be scheduled as required in April. Are there any questions, Council? Councilor Stoner?
I know that we discussed this last week, and we continue to reiterate that we won't be moving contentious business forward, that we are very cognizant that we can't get effective public engagement, but I'm wondering if it'd be possible to have a clear list somewhere on our website about what activities we will still be addressing through council meetings at this time.
So, as council knows, we have a draft agenda planner, and I think without giving false expectation moving forward, we're unsure of what staff are going to be available to prepare council reports or to be able to present. It would be a very short window of opportunity, so I think we have some items that have been on the planner for quite a while, and the materials are ready. We could definitely list some of those things that were previously scheduled for committee of the whole before we decided to move everything to a special meeting. But there are some reports or some topics that are a little bit more fluid and a little bit moving. And I would be afraid to put those on just because we wouldn't want to alert the public and make them hopeful.
Yeah, and maybe not specific topics, but I guess what I mean is like a clear statement that we will not be moving forward with public hearings. That is,
And DPs
and what that
DVPs.
kind of looks like, just so that folks are really clear about what work is and is not going forward.
Sure, that's, I think flipping it around like that is a good idea.
Yeah.
We can definitely do that.
Thank you.
No delegations.
Councilor Herford?
Yeah, thank you. I think you, Councilor Soares, summed it up. We got there. If we can outline what it isn't, because that we know, and then as to what it is, we'll try to communicate as quickly as we can, at least for this period of time till we figure out how to move otherwise. But I think that's where most of the fear comes, if we can sort of nail something.
Okay. Do I see a hand over here, Councilor? No? Okay. Would someone like to move the motion with regard to?
Oh, Chair?
Yes, Councilor Peg,
Just a couple of clarifying questions if I can. First, is the plan that we will probably hold special meetings at the same time we would have otherwise held a regular meeting? So there will be sort of evening meetings, they'll just be special instead of regular?
No. That may not be the case.
Okay.
We have staff who are now working from home, and they are, many of them, trying to balance home life and work. And so we've got to figure out what the new normal looks like for everybody. And especially if we move to all electronic meetings, it may be easier for our staff to be available during the day. rather than the evening. So I'm actually not gonna guarantee that the special business meetings will be scheduled for 6 o'clock on those Tuesdays. They may be at different times. But they will, of course, all be live streamed and archived, and we won't be moving any business forward that requires public participation. So I feel like the community can still stay informed about what we're working on. They will still have the ability to email us and get responses from us. And again, if we post the type of work we won't be doing until we get better guidance from the province on public participation, I think you will find that the agendas will be short and focused on internal work, policy work, that sort of thing, as needed.
Okay, thank you. And my other question, and just for clarification for the public mostly, my understanding is that the key differences in this context between a special and a regular meeting is a special meeting may occur on a different schedule than a regular meeting, and you've just sort of spoken to that. But the other piece is, at a special meeting, we are allowed, through our procedure bylaw, to have electronic participation, and that's just simply not allowed at a regular meeting. So that just effectively making a special meeting enables that electronic participation of councillors. Is that correct?
Do you want to respond to that, sir?
In addition to that, electronic participation of staff and delegation if necessary.
Did you hear that, Councillor Pangil?
Not quite.
Sorry. It also allows for electronic participation by staff and by outside parties.
Okay, thank you.
Chair?
Yes, go ahead, Councillor Reeves.
Thank you. Sorry, I've been asking for chair for a few minutes and I realized my mute button was still on.
I was not ignoring you.
One way to shut me down. So I take it that we're still going to be having possibly committee of the whole meetings, and I'm thinking about the budget because I think the one outstanding issue, I missed the last few weeks of course, is the tax rate. And so I'm assuming that there's maybe one or two other things like that for committee of the whole discussion.
Councillor Reeves, we are going to put them on the special business meeting
Okay.
because they require a decision of council, and then we would have to meet again to approve a committee of the whole discussion, and we're trying to meet less, not more. So that is still on the agenda planner, is our tax rate discussion, because we do need to do that. Unfortunately, we have approved our budget, which many municipalities have not. So that they're finding this quite a tough situation for them.
Right, thank you.
All right, did we have a mover and a second? Oh, someone move this. Moved by Councilor French, seconded by Councilor Herford. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Council motion to close. Moved by Councilor Herford, seconded by Councilor Stoner. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.